Well, okay. So, different shirt. I'm back. It's about 20 hours later, and I'm going to try to do this properly. I was about 4 minutes into this video, and then my camera crashed, so I had to fix that. Oh gosh, today, today my work day, that was in between the last video and right now. Uh, I was on my feet for most of the day. My feet really hurt. And that's a good thing because my brain enjoyed, getting up and doing the different thing that I usually do, but my feet didn't. I'm usually, the job I have at the state party headquarters is a desk job. I'm very grateful to have it, but yes, it is a desk job, and I need to do something about how my feet reacted. So yeah, we got stuff going on. Some people like to pretend I don't put in this disclaimer, but I totally do. So this is for everyone's benefit. Uh, you know, just starting right off with this, all opinions and views expressed in this video are my own and not of my employer, any other employees of my employer, or anyone duly authorized to speak or act on behalf of my employer. So now we got that out of the way. Gonna see if we can actually transition over properly to the... Now, one thing I noticed in the previous iteration of this before my camera crashed is, let's see if I can... Yeah, it's still there. Okay, cool. See, the highlight from the end of the last video, see, I didn't touch this computer at all in between uploading and coming back to it. I had a long day and everything, and none of it had to do with my computer. Which was good actually, to be honest. So we were at 2026-15, and we are about to be in 2026-16. So let's go ahead and scroll a bit down. Okay, the one about election integrity. Okay, cool. So we are at 254 in the video. Actually, it was right at about the same part that I wrote in my notes last time. So good. And this one's all from Brent Regan. Cool, 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 cool. 2026-16. A resolution calling for election integrity. Submitted by Brent Regan to be presented by who knows. There's some juggling involving a lot of people, stuff. Whereas, our Republican form of government, guaranteed by the United States Constitution, depends on free and fair elections. Some people might quibble about the exact term there, guaranteed, but hopefully they don't waste too much time on that. Also, whereas the public's confidence that votes will be accurately cast and counted has been falling and is now at 57%. I didn't know it was that low. That's a problem. And whereas the Idaho Secretary of State is the chief election officer of the state, and it is his responsibility to obtain and maintain uniformity in the application, operation, and interpretation of the election laws. Yeah, I'm familiar with that part of it. Title 34 is where I have to look a lot of times with parliamentary stuff inside the party. Whereas for the voters to have confidence in election systems, those in charge of running the elections must act and be perceived as fair, impartial, and without bias. Oh, is he? Is he going where I think he's going? Well, let's strap in for the ride. Whereas it is reported that in the June 2nd, 2026 Idaho Capitol Sun, okay, I think he's going there. Here, strapping in. Idaho Capital Sun article that the Idaho Secretary, and my phone is bothering me. The Idaho Secretary of State, Phil McGrane, endorsed 26 legislative candidates ahead of the May 19th. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, I am up to speed now. Whereas the Idaho Secretary of State, Phil McGrane, had reportedly spent at least 16K on mailers supporting his endorsed candidates. Whereas those mailers prominently displayed McGrane, Secretary of State, and called to support our Republican leaders. Candidates endorsed by. Okay, this is a problem. This is a problem before the primary. And it's for very similar rules is the reason why I couldn't say certain things before the primary, or rather more specifically, before polls closed. Yeah, that there is definitely conflict of interest here. Whereas a reasonable person could conclude that the endorsements came from an office of the Idaho Secretary. And we're going straight from there into the resolved. Oh. Okay. All right, now full disclosure. Full disclosure. A good chunk of my day. Well, okay, see, no, I shouldn't say it like that. See, most of my day at work involved working with a really, really sweet, nice volunteer named Rose, who was probably, at least 3 decades my senior, probably more. And she and I, and later on Ronald Lee Linsman, were filling all of the red cannabis convention bags that all of the delegates and alternates are getting at registration. So you get your credential and you also get now why am I mentioning that? Well, one of the items, because there's always going to be like a few items, the that people that sponsor the convention itself also get to like send in a little goodie for the goodie bag, so because that's effectively what the bag is. And and Phil McGrane did donate a lot, a sizable amount of money to the Idaho Republican Party for those, for the convention. And the good, the items that he sent for the goodie bag were effectively a packet of spice for barbecuing, or I think the steak one was actually for grilling, I think. And in also full disclosure, Phil McGrane is actually pretty good at that kind of thing. So yeah, he actually does know what he's talking about with grilling and barbecuing and whatnot. And so the steak rub and whatnot, a bunch of those, I spent the day putting those in, and Rose did most of the filling. I was doing a whole lot of the other coordinating part of it, but sometimes I was also doing that and counting the bags, and anyway, it was a whole drama. But yeah, so full disclosure, Phil McGrane did donate directly to the Idaho Republican Party for the convention, and he did put something in the goodie bag, and it is clearly labeled as being from him. And it's so that's that is a thing that the viewer or the listener should be aware. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the elected officials overseeing elections, including the Secretary of State, County Clerk, must maintain, in practice and appearance, the fair and unbiased execution of their duties. I don't think that's unreasonable, given the supporting whereas clauses. Be it further resolved that the delegates of the 2026 Republican State Convention call on the Idaho legislature to draft and pass legislation that would prohibit the Secretary of State and county clerks personally or as elected officials from endorsing any candidates and participating in the elections they oversee, and to impose penalties for violations. I don't think that's unreasonable. And given the wording here, I gather, from Brent, I gather that it was technically legal. Which in this case, that's not a good thing. Okay. Hard agree for 2026-16. And then I'm going to put something in parentheses here. I'll type it out first. Okay, now, riveting video there. Okay, so the full response I have to 2026-16 is hard agree. Full disclosure, at present, I work for the Idaho Republican Party, and Phil McGrane has donated resources to the party. All right, now we will move on. Okay, the camera is still working. Great. 2026-17. 2026-17. And let's see, where are we at in the video? 11:54. Okay. Now, what is this one? 2026-17, prohibiting candidates from filing for public office with certain criminal background. This is Vince Ranghug. Okay. Okay. Let's find out what this actually is. Whereas Idaho State Code is relatively silent on prohibiting candidates with criminal background from filing for public office. I'm aware. Whereas most good citizens of Idaho expect candidates filing for public to be of good moral and ethical character, and if elected to said office, operate with good moral, okay, and with ethical behavior, fine, okay. That is the expectation. Whereas the citizens of Idaho expect candidates filing for public office once elected to perform their job with trust and not behave through immoral, unethical, or illegal behavior. Okay, but this, okay, we're getting close to the assumption that people might have engaged in illegal behavior while in office. And that is a very actionable accusation. Be careful. Whereas the filing candidate with previous particular criminal background carries an air of distrust and inherent disbelief of virtue of holding any particular, you say. Are you going to elaborate on that? Whereas Thomas Jefferson, in a letter to John Adams on October 28, 1813, wrote about the need for public officials to demonstrate moral accountability. When a man assumes a public trust, he should consider himself as public property. Well, yeah, I'm aware. I'm aware of what of the letter and where Jefferson was actually going with it. Yes. Therefore, be it resolved for the public of governor, lieutenant governor, and sheriff candidates with felony convictions, even if expunged, are for. Okay, so even if expunged, that's an interesting placement there. Do you mean somebody who pled guilty to a felony, but was later absolved of it due to more evidence? Do you mean also somebody who pled down from a felony to a misdemeanor? Because your text is very ambiguous here. And not only that, what you have to realize also is that what prosecutors do a lot of the times in the United States, and I have to say I know personally, in Idaho, in Ada County as well, where a prosecutor will absolutely overcharge, especially if they know that, that the person that they're accusing of stuff can't get their own lawyer. The public defender's office is overworked, and so a prosecutor can often get away with either charging a person with a much more severe crime than what actually happened, and this has happened in Ada County, and I know for a fact. That was quite some years ago, though. Or somebody that is actually, or somebody that was actually innocent, but since they can't defend themselves, all the public defender can really do is get that down to a misdemeanor from a felony. And that was a few months of my life. I did not get to see somebody I actually really cared about, because she was completely innocent of that crime, and she couldn't defend herself. So the public defender was able to get out of the big ask, but the little ask is still there, the misdemeanor. She's going to have that on. She had that on her record for a while, but even if you background check, you're going to find that a record never really goes away, because people can still find the information about that stuff on the internet, even if it's like 20-something years later by now. And that one's not even my own personal experience. Okay, and let's see, continuing on. Be it resolved that all other public office from state to the county and municipality. Okay, you need to word that better. Candidates with 2 or more felonies, or 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors, or 4 or more are prohibited from filing for public office. Okay, that's going a little bit farther than. Yeah, Be it resolved that, other than lieutenant governor, filing candidates may require pardons or restoration of civil rights for certain offenses. Okay, I'm pretty sure this person who authored this does not know how the system works, because restoration of civil rights, how does that jive with a lot of the felon language that you had earlier? For certain offices. You mind elaborating on that? Be it resolved that the candidate knowing fault of a prohibited action shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Oh, so you're even going to put another more charge on that for this? No, okay. This resolution is inherently un-American and fairly ignorant of both the judicial process and how felonies even work. The upright and of this resolution itself cannot be said to be upright in the face of the very real access to justice issue of overcharging a felony just so a defendant can only plead down. This resolution and its proposed laws are incompatible with some very real realities of our justice system. Find another way to weed out the undesirables. Okay, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to read it back to them, not only so that the viewer can hear it, but also just to make sure it's all straight in my head here. So 2026-17, this resolution is inherently un-American and fairly ignorant of both the judicial process and how felonies even work. The character of this resolution itself cannot be said to be upright in the face of the very real access to justice issue of overcharging on a felony just so a defendant can only plead down. This resolution and its proposed laws are incompatible with some very real realities of our justice system. Find another way to weed out the undesirables. And I mean every word of this. 2026-17 is a no-go. Hard disagree. Oh yeah, I'll put that up first. Let's say, okay, who did this one again? Oh, figures. Okay. 2026-18. Let's see, 2026-18. And we are at 2154 in the video. All right, and what is this one? 2026-18 resolution for electing precinct committeemen via Republican Party caucus. Okay, leaves the laband of Bonner County. Okay, I hear good things about Bonner County still to this day. Let's see, it's to be submitted by Lisa Blanben, to be presented by her. Whereas the Republican Party is a private organization, not wrong. Whereas it is the right of the Republican Party to elect candidates that reflect their platform and core values. Also, we're on the same page there so far. Whereas the Idaho Republican Party is under attack by crossover voting from individuals actively thwarting the success of the party to elect precinct committee who reflect our core. Okay. There might be a way of simplifying this one. I get where you're going with it, and it's cool. But believe me, it reflects the reality of the situation. Simplify that or word it differently, because the individuals have actively thwarting the successor to elect, blah, 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 blah. Okay, simplify that. I don't know. Okay, anyway. Whereas caucusing allows for better discussion, informative voting, and candidate interaction with electors. You could make the case for that. I'm not going to say anything negative about that. Whereas the Idaho Republican Party successfully caucused for our presidential nominee and received positive feedback at the increase in community engagement, camaraderie, and, well, it's definitely true in some parts of the state. I'll put it that way. Now, therefore, let it be resolved. Okay, you're putting way too many words into that. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the Idaho State Convention that we urge the legislature to amend Idaho Code 34. Oh, that's the precinct committeeman one. Okay, okay. See, the screen is this way, and I know in the frame it's like down there. Yeah, but when I'm pointing over here, it's like I'm pointing over there. But anyway, okay. That to allow Republican precinct committeemen to be elected by Republican caucus to set forth and governed by the Idaho Republican Central Committee. I think you mean State Central Committee. And it's not that I don't like this idea. I like this idea, but perhaps the process and rules for electing by caucus should be a little bit more nailed down before we bring this one to the legislature. Because I know exactly what's going to happen when somebody tries it. Say, oh, well, we haven't heard much about we don't know how they want to do it. And so it becomes well, this guy doesn't want to do it because this guy wants to do it, when this guy doesn't want to do it because, and it's this whole circle of suck. And there's a lot of little things having to do with partisan activity and the electoral code, and it's a whole lot of, well, I don't want to do it because this guy wanted to do it. I don't want to do it because this guy doesn't want to do it. You know, it's that same cycle of suck. So I'm not going to vote against this, but there are very real structural issues here. Be it further resolved that the chairman of the House is hereby directed to establish a caucus system. Okay. How are you going to force... okay, because establish a caucus system means that we have to change the rules. The chairman, in and of themselves, does not change the rules. There's a whole process for changing the rules. And the only people who really get to do that are the Idaho Republican State Central Committee. So, I'll say passive agree, but there are structural issues with this resolution. Okay. And I'll contrast this with my own resolution that I put in there. Well, it was one of them that specifically stated, hey, we need this kind of change in the rules. Go and I call on everyone to draft such a rule, such rules and such changes, and put them in at the appropriate time. That's what I did, because that was what you should really put in here. In fact, I'm borderline about to put, write up an amendment to this and put it in there. I might do that because I don't hate this. This idea is good. Implementation has some serious pitfalls, but I'm just gonna, I might actually reach out to this author, because this resolution has, it should succeed, but it might not if certain parts of it aren't addressed. And I want to be helpful. I want to be constructive instead of just tear it down. So next one is 2026-19, 2738 in the 2738. Resolution to caucus for Idaho Republican Party candidates in general election. Oh, okay, this is same thing. Whereas maintaining a conservative Iowa is imperative. Okay, not wrong. Whereas the goal of the Idaho Republican is to elect candidates who best represent the platform. Okay, well, so far agreeing. Republican candidates elected to office have failed to upload, and you're not wrong. There are some classic responses to that. Maybe that's addressed here. I don't know yet. Let's keep going. Whereas the ability to select the candidates who best represent the platform values are primarily has been jeopardized by candidates misrepresenting themselves. Hard agree right there that this is exactly what's happening. This is exactly what's happening. Whereas the Idaho close Republican primary has been irrevocably compromised by non-Republicans. Irrevocably? You're already saying that there is no point. And I refuse to go down that dark path. But we'll continue. Ability to register as Republicans for the primary election, and there's no way of stopping this practice. I have a short on this YouTube channel. In fact, I think it's still my only short about checking the box on the registration form. It sounds like I agree with this person a lot. A lot. I've been talking about this very thing for years. Whereas the state has no remedy for close primary crossover voting. Well, we kind of do. It's about the right of association. Whereas unaffiliated and newly registered voters can choose to vote in the Republican on election day. This is true. Caucusing diminishes the ability for non-Republicans to infiltrate. Reduces, doesn't eliminate, but trying to be constructive here. Whereas caucusing allows more engaged discussion, etc., etc., etc. Didn't you say that above? Okay, well, anyway, whereas, now therefore, you put it the long and stupid way. The Idaho Republican Party supports precinct county caucuses to elect the best representatives of the Republican Party for candidates in the general election. Okay. Therefore, resolved that we urge the legislature to amend Idaho Code 704. Oh, okay. To allow Republican precincts to be elected by Republican caucus set forth by. Okay, this is now drifting into one of the problems I had with your last one. Is that you should come up with more than just that. Maybe come up with a suggestion that can then be implemented. But there that the chair is hereby directed. Oh, okay. This is the same problem that you had at the end of your last one. If I remember, I'm going to talk to this person because I don't want to see this fail. And you know what? I have the same reaction. Passive agree, but there are structural issues with this resolution. You know how to fly, you didn't know how to land. And that can be often more trouble than never taking off. I don't want to just tear this down, though. Like, it's got good ideas in it. Anyway, I'm going to move on. No, I got to move on. 2026-20. 2026-20. And where are we in the video? 3144. All right, so 2026-20. Expansion of the homeowner's property tax exemption. Okay. This appears by Jan Pete Moyer of Teton County. And to be presented by Jan Pete, etc., etc. Whereas Idaho's primary residence homeowners are facing unprecedented property tax burdens due to rapid market-driven. You're not wrong. In fact, I'll briefly explain something. I am the fourth of 5 children. My oldest brother, Tom, he's sometimes seen with me at these state party level meetings, and whatnot. We are often there in political things together. Now, my third oldest brother, his name is Andy. He rants about this specific stuff a lot. And you know what? He has a point with a lot of it because he's had some difficulties in his life, and most of them are not his fault. It's just and he, by the time that he could even think about getting a house or anything like that, it's the situation's already really messed up for anybody trying to get a house. And when he does eventually get a house, I mean, it's gonna then be at that point, expensive just to effectively rent your house from the government, because that's what property tax really is. I sometimes like to throw the grenade down the hall, as it were, when talking with my libertarian friends. When I get them arguing with each other about, is taxation theft? No, taxation isn't theft, it's extortion. And then they start, it's really funny to watch, but the underlying idea behind that prank is the government is not you're not getting something from the government that you really should when you pay taxes, because that whole price for civilized society thing, that's, in a lot of ways, that's starting to be very untrue. But anyway, I'm getting really off topic. Okay. Whereas the current Idaho homeowners exemption is capped at the lesser of 50% of the property's value, or a maximum of the yada yada, a limit that has remained stagnant and failed to track the hyperinflation. I've heard a lot of people mention that, not just my brother, but people try to do stuff about this in the legislature, and they always fail at it, or there's a couple of recent examples where it's made slightly worse. Anyway, whereas other forward-thinking states have aggressively expanded their primary residential homestead exemptions to provide immediate and meaningful relief to citizens, such as That example, okay, I'm not going to read all of that. Whereas a stagnant cap on, okay, you know what? It's starting to make my eyes glaze over, and I kind of don't want that. Therefore, be it resolved that the Idaho Republican State Central Committee urge. Okay, you should say convention in this because this is not a resolution going before the State Central Committee. It's a resolution going before the convention. It's definitely clear that you've had this on the back burner for a while, and that's good. But when you bring it to a convention, as opposed to one of the other meetings, you need to do the text replacement and put in the right words. That the Idaho, I'll just say Idaho Republican Party there, urges the state legislature to yada 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 yada. Okay, that the Idaho state legislature is urged to index this maximum cap. Okay, this looks fine to me. I'll say passive agree and move on from that because I don't necessarily have the position to be commenting on that. Okay, so 2026-21. 26-21. Let's see, correct something down here. All right, no, sorry, I was fixing something in my notes real quick. Where are we at? We're in the video, 3621. All right, and what is this? Resolution 2026-21, approval of new taxing districts submitted by the same person, to be presented by the same person. Taxing districts are approved through ballot initiative once they are on the ballot and vote once they're... Okay. This is a sentence fragment right there. Did you mean for that to be on the end of this sentence? That would be okay, but that means that you take away that full stop and decapitalize this O here. Did people not take any kind of writing class or have any kind of writing instruction in junior high? Anyway, I'm sorry. I get really frustrated about that kind of thing because I took that instruction and used it at pretty much in the rest of my life after junior high. All these other people, they didn't, and it's really frustrating to me. But anyway, whereas it takes a simple majority to pass said ballot initiative. Ballot initiative. Okay, we're going there. Whereas having seen many of these initiatives about lower, no. Okay, this was not written well. However, it is also very clear that you didn't use AI because AI would try to fill out all of this. So I guess that's a point in its direction. Whereas most 11 to 12 are the registered voters approved the tax. Okay, well, I'm not going to disagree there. It sounds correct. Whereas to change the Idaho state statute for new ballot initiative tax is a 2/3 from a simple majority. Whereas this proposed change will... What? Okay, I'm gonna see if this will zoom in. No, it will not zoom in. Okay, never mind. I'm gonna try to but y'all see this? Am I having a stroke right now? What is this word? A capital U apostrophe ECT. I don't know this word. It's making my head hurt staring at it. Okay. This will not, that word, previous approved text into that. Oh, I think it means effect. Okay, and it's also the wrong effect, but, I think, but whatever. All right, fine. That's just a Scribner's error. It's probably a fat finger typo like I do all the time. Such as a road or a bridge, emergency blah, 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 remain. All of the taxing are not pertaining to public safety. Okay. Therefore, be it resolved that... Okay, you should say Republican Party here. Urge the legislature to make that change. Okay. Be it further resolved that the... Okay, that should change to urge, okay, I'll say passive agree. Passive agree that this resolution was written horribly and possibly not even proofread. I'm going to have to be mean about this because I'd rather I'd rather be truthful. So my whole reaction to 2026-21 is passive agree, but this resolution was written horribly and possibly not even proofread. Okay, 2026-22. 2026 2026-20-22. We're 4055 in the video. All right, and what is this one? 2026-22 precinct commitment responsibilities, Kellyanne Gomez in Cassia County. Okay, to be presented by, okay, on whereas on May 19, 2020, so the primary election had poor turnout. Sorry to hear that. Some common issue with primaries. Whereas most voters do not know where there is an election until they see campaign signs. Okay, but that is often a problem we can't fix from our end. Because you can lead a horse to water, you can't make him drink. It's just one of those things. You have to effectively remove people's like free will in order to really fix that, and we can't even do that for one, and two, even if we could, I refuse to. Anyway, whereas most voters have no idea who won their precinct or what a precinct even does. Whereas on page 34 in the rules, PCs should have to fill out candidate. Wait, what? Whereas on page 34 in rules, okay, which rules? And do your local bylaws really have 34 pages? That's a problem. The PCs should have to fill out the candidate and also have a performance evaluation. Is there a rule that you want to propose, or at least have people propose? Because you should be more clear about that. I don't even know what they're getting at. In fact, you know what? I probably have it up still somewhere. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show this without warning. Going to so I'm just curious what's on page 34 of the state rules now, because that might be what they're referring to, and if that is, well, then they should be more clear anyway. 34, page 34. Yeah, okay, I'm close. Okay, integrity and affiliation. Oh, they're talking about the integrity and affiliation. Well, they should be more clear about, the author should be more clear about that. We, as Idaho Republicans, expect all individuals, the people of Idaho demand leaders who, blah, 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 blah. State chairman shall send prepare each in legislative office. Okay. That's a mischaracterization of the rule. Okay, so let me get back to where I was here. So, what they're talking about is Article 13 of the state rules, integrity in affiliation. That's what they're talking about here. Kellyanne Gomez, that is, I imagine, or whoever wrote it. That's kind of not good that you're misstating things, or at least very poorly stating things. I have to be harsh about this kind of thing, these days anyway. Many constituents live in an orphan precinct where the PC is assigned and holds a position but never contacts the voter. Well, that is a problem. In fact, Gem State conservatives absolutely made it worse in the previous cycle. 100% made that worse. The people behind Gem State conservatives, Tom Lurcher, Tom Luna, Trent Clark, they are absolutely responsible for this problem getting worse. 100%. There is no way that they weren't responsible for it. I'll put it that way. Continuing. Whereas there is a disconnect between the rules and PC manual, and the PC has more jobs to do than just voting. Correct. And you know how we got this to this situation, right? It's because Gem State conservatives, they are absolutely responsible for making this so much worse than it needed to be, and that was because they were trying to engineer results of a reorganization meeting. They didn't even want the other PCs showing up after a county reorg or an LD reorg or after the convention. And you know what? You know what the kind of situation that you get when this is a chronic issue is you get the Victor Miller type situation where at least you can't do this with proxies now, where there are PCs, the ones that they got into these positions, that we hadn't even seen since the reorg, a year plus since, and now we get, and then we get, people, holding like 13 and 17 different proxies in Ada County. That was a situation caused by Victor Miller, and he was depending on this. An absolute rape of the system. Yes, I am using that term, rape. R-A-P-E, Romeo Alpha Papa Echo. It was a rape of the system. And so glad that not only is that jerk out of here, but that we fixed the proxy situation. You set me off. Whereas there are no checks and balances that any PCs filling jobs listed in training. Well, there is a check and balance that we're starting to see in some counties. And funnily enough, the pushback itself is interesting, and who's doing the pushback is also interesting. But attendance is starting to be a problem now. It is definitely not a fix for the whole thing, because sometimes what people do, like Anus Rothstein, we used to call him Amos, but we call him Anus now. He's no longer a PC, but what he would do is he would do that thing like in pro wrestling, where you see a wrestler, when they've gone beyond the ropes and they're doing the fighting outside of the ring, and it's not that kind of hardcore match. So the ref has to start counting out, and he has to count 1, and then you wait a few seconds, 2, and if they get to 10, then the match is the match is over. But the way that they get around this is that they roll onto the apron, into the ring, and then roll right back out in the clock, and they have to, start the clock over again. We don't have a fix for that yet, and one of the most egregious examples of this was Anus Rothstein. Just for that. So there are checks. We need more checks and balances. Absolutely. Be it further resolved that the grassroots people are not being reached. You should probably read that more. It should probably read more like something like, be it further resolved that the Idaho Republican Party recognizes that, that's not a thing that you resolve right there, but you do resolve to recognize a fact that, that's the way that you should handle it. Be it finally resolved that all PCs must have training to understand that their job duties are more than, okay. We try making people understand. You know what that does? It actually aggravates the problem, because people who just got recruited to show up for a reorg and then split, well, we reach out to these people, and then they definitely don't show up after that. This will make it worse. Unfortunately, it is a very, very sad situation. It is a very frustrating situation, and I get really worked up every time I start thinking about it, because it is extremely unfair to the party itself, and it is extremely unfair to the Republican voter. Okay. So, This was 2026-2022. Passive agree, but the resolved clauses do not provide any solutions, any practical solutions to the problem. In fact, the last resolved clause has a very high likelihood of exacerbating the problem. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I read that all out. 2026-22, about 40:55 into the video. Passive agree, but the resolved clauses do not provide any practical solutions to the problem. In fact, the last resolved clause has a very high likelihood of exacerbating the problem. I have to be very honest with this because we're the only we have to be very honest, because if we lie, we either lie to everyone else or we lie to ourselves. We won't get to a good solution. We won't get to a good place if we do that. So we'll just do the next one. 2026-23. 2026-23. And where are we at the video? 51:43. Oh crap, I really did just use the term rape in the previous resolution. Oh no. Oh no. Oh jeez. I can't go back and do it now, otherwise I'd have to redo this whole video again, and I'm totally not doing that. Anyway, 2026-23. Resolution affirming the sovereign authority of the state over local government. Oh, this is the flag thing, isn't it? Well, let's see where we go, because I don't disagree with the flag bills. However, some people either implementing it or pushing that bill are often doing more harm than good. And like I said, and you know what? Like I said to my own boss, Dorothy Moon, today, about a little bit of a separate issue, a little bit unrelated, but still rings true, is that when we have volunteers and people coming together to do the work of the party, when it is about the work of the party, people get along just fine. When it's not about the work of the party, when it's not about representing voters, then we get egos and characters that aren't getting along. I said it. Submitted by Barbara Ehart. Oh, representative out of, okay, cool, to be presented by her. Whereas government was instituted by the people, for the people. Okay, agreed. We're doing good so far. Whereas all branches of the levels of government are required to protect the rights of the people. So far, but this isn't sounding like the flag thing so far. Whereas is the actual stated purpose of the legislature to protect the rights and property of the people. Property. Oh, you're going out from that angle? Whereas the state government is constitutional check on the abuse of power by local governments. Not wrong. Supposed to work that way. Whereas the base unit of government established by our founders was the family. Not wrong. Going biblical there. Whereas the powers inherent in the people that created the state, and the state created the federal government, and the state created the counties and cities. We're going the whole federalist and those whole arguments that were in the papers. Okay. Whereas, under the established legal principle known as Dillon's Rule, local governments are political subdivisions created by the state as a matter of administrative convenience, possessing only those powers expressly granted to them by the state constitution and the legislature. You want your own supremacy clause for inside of a state. I don't hate it, but there is a wrong way to do it. Let's continue though. Maybe we're going somewhere good. Whereas the creator inherently retains authority over the creation, meaning the sovereign power of the state naturally supersedes the subordinate. Oh, we're getting high-minded here. Delegated authority of local jurisdictions wherever conflict arises. Okay. Whereas ultimately is a disservice to the state GOP to support for... Su, I can't talk today. Support the deferment of power from state to local governments, primary municipalities, where the elected officials are considered nonpartisan. Oh, we're going that... Oh, we're going in that direction. Okay, I see what you're doing, Coach Barb. All right. And thus are removed from governing principles of the state. Okay, cool, cool. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Idaho Republican Party hereby affirms that because local jurisdictions are entirely creatures of the state, the statutory and sovereign authority of the state government is paramount and stands at all times as the supreme governing structure. Okay. Okay. Oh, is that the end? Oh, hallelujah, it's the end. Okay. Agree. Okay, I'll say hard agree. Go get Barb. Okay, that's literally my reaction. 2026-23, 51, 43 in the video. Hard agree, go get him, Barb. All right, so I am going to transition back to the webcam here. All right, I'm going to be doing the whatever the next biggest packet was. I think it's platform. I don't remember. I'll check after I'm done with this video. I'll just do the next one and then whatever's left. But part 2 is now done. There will not need to be a part 3 unless something real crazy happens. But Brian Ullman was actually on top of a lot of this stuff, so I don't think that there will be a part 3. See you in the next video. Blessings.